readjust the ratio or readjust the threshold or anything on the bus stuff. I always kind of start with it because sometimes when people do a mix and then they add a bunch of stuff on after the fact, they kind of get lost in it sounds better, so it must be better, or it sounds, brighter, or it sounds bigger, so it must be better. But sometimes they regret that decision down the road.
Right. It's harder to be objective down the line, and then you take it off.
100%.
If you start with it and you take it off, your mix falls apart. So I guess one way or another, you got to stick with it, or leave it to the mastering engineer. Which leads me to my next question, which is you kind of were talking about mastering, how you have like a love-hate relationship sort of with mastering. And I know you do mastering yourself. I mean, I wanted to just ask you, like, how are you able to master your own mixes? Because I can't do that. But just take it away. Let me know what your thoughts are on mastering.
Well, I guess that's something I've never really struggled with. I mostly master out of necessity, especially for a lot of the hip hop and rap stuff and the pop stuff that's, the workflow and the turnaround times are a little crazy. And the demands of recalls or alternate versions. Like I said, the amount of times where there's been a last minute alternate version needed, either for censorship or for, some kind of distribution, or even like a remix, like someone's about to release a song, some other artist gets wind of it and says, I want to get in on that song. So then the label or the artist calls me and says, hey, can you double up this verse? He's gonna record something. He's gonna send you a track, add his vocal in, print that. We're gonna release it. It's got the same release date, so it's still coming out tomorrow. But there's just gonna be a feature on it now. All of a sudden, having a finished mix and then getting those kind of requests and saying, okay, I'm gonna do an alternate version here, then send it to mastering. They're gonna, now I've got it's just another step in the chain that I kind of need to get on my level of workflow and availability that just doesn't really work. So it's easier if I keep it all in-house for certain projects. When I do master myself, it's always a separate session. So I do my mix as a mixer, and I finish the mix and I print it out as a normal, like let's say -12 LUFS kind of mix. And then I pull that into a mastering session and do a whole separate thing on mastering. And so maybe that helps with my brain to kind of, because then I'm listening to a stereo file and the mix is the mix, and that's what I'm trying to work on. And as I start to bring the level up and, then things start to rear its head, in terms of resonance or the way that the EQ, the low end's getting limited. So then I adjust for that with an EQ before the limiter. And, and then now I'm a mastering engineer. I'm just mastering this mix that this random dude, Evan, happened to send me. And, hopefully it was a good mix. There are times where the master will start to respond a certain way. So I'll go back into the mix and I'll do a vocal up, or I'll retweak the low end or something so that it doesn't affect my mastering chain the same way. But it is definitely two different hats. And for whatever reason, I am able to like take off the hat, and it's literally, it's like it's removed. It's almost like someone else is saying, hey, I tried to master this. The low end was getting a little too distorted. Can we try and move a little of the sub energy up into the mid bass just a little bit? And then mixer Evan says, I can totally do that. I'll send you an alternate. Hold that thought. Go back into my mix session.
Good for you, man.
Yeah, and it just seems to work. But with that said, there are lots of projects that I do like external mastering. That's usually my more like full band stuff, whether it's rock records or indie kind of records. Sometimes I like the collaboration, and there are mastering engineers that can add something or take a mix somewhere where I wouldn't have thought to take it, which is really fun and exciting for me. But I have had a love-hate relationship with mastering, because there's been some labels that have a mastering guy that they've said, can we send your production and your mixes to this guy because he does all of our stuff? And I say, yeah, sure. And it just comes back and it's like the mix is just destroyed. It's like there was obviously I'm not going to name any names, but there was one where it was like, I had this pretty aggressive, hard, it was that Inkura band where I had a heavier sound. One thing I struggle with metal a lot, and it's not so much the case anymore, but like in the 2000s, like metal had this really bad habit of having zero low end. where it would all be angst, it would all be fizz, it would all be grit, but there was no weight and there was no body. And like these drums, like the kicks were all and the snare it was all just snappy, clacky. There was no gravitas to any of it. And I was like, this is supposed to be heavy, but there's nothing heavy about this. It just sounds like fizz. So anyway,
God.
So I had worked on this production and we had gotten the mixes to this place where they had really nice low end. The toms were just thunderous, kick and the snare both had really good weight. And the mastering engineer, in his quest to, compete in the loudness wars, just like everything came back distorted. Like all the low end had lost its purity of sine wave, like we were talking about, and everything was like just the floor tom. Every single time the floor tom was hit, it was like distort, like just 100% distortion. Yeah. It was just like, how did you think that could be acceptable? Like I don't get it. So I ended up mastering that record myself, just because that was a destruction of what we had tried to create.
Right? You slave away on the records, and then it's just like, where did you put my slaving away?
Exactly. And so that's kind of affected my trust of mastering engineers. Like I said, there's been lots of opportunity to work with different mastering engineers, and at this point, it's been about a 50-50. 50% of the time, it's like, wow, that sounds really good, and that actually sounds bigger than my master, and I really like that you pushed, this thing forward in the mid frequencies or whatever. And then sometimes it's like, yeah, I know that's just wrong. That's just a mistake. And so there are some mastering engineers that have worked really well. One is CPS mastering here in Vancouver, which is Brock McFarlane and Elisa Pensing, which I think you've had as guests before.
I've had Elisa, yeah. She's awesome, yeah.
They're both exceptional mastering engineers, and their ear, they would never undo something that you've tried to accomplish in your mix. And then one I've been using recently is a guy named Christian Montano from Montano Mastering. And I think he's in Toronto,
also been on he's in Toronto, and he's been on the show. And yes, totally. He's the man.
And maybe it's just the relationship that him and I have built, but he's willing to take risks mastering, but he always keeps the integrity of the intent intact. So it's not just my mix, louder and a little brighter like most mastering engineers will do. He actually will try and take something farther, which is exciting for me. And sometimes, it doesn't always work out, but he's really good at doing different versions where he'll be like, this is a version where I kind of pushed this, and this is a version where I did this. Which one do you like better? And then, it leaves it to the client to pick one. But there is that element of, this is where I got the mix. Is there anything you can add to it that'll kind of, add just an extra, because I like that collaboration. Like I do, but it has to be a positive collaboration. It can't be a regression on, everything that you've put into the production, that the artist has tried to, the clarity of voice. And if let's just say the clarity of voice is one of the intents, and then everything in the production is done to amplify that, everything, the way the arrangement's done, the way that all the instruments are recorded to allow that voice to sit there. And then all of a sudden the mastering engineer just flattens everything, and the voice is sunk back into it's like, okay, well, you've undone everything that we've done to make that moment. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the communication is everything. And I know that's something that's important for Christian. So
he's the best communicator I've ever worked with. I don't think I've ever communicated more with a mastering engineer than I've communicated with him.
There you go. So communication is king, everybody. Mastering engineers, communicate with your artists and producers and mixers. Mixers and mixers communicate with your mastering engineers. That's the moral of the story. All right, man. Well, Evan, this has been super, super fun, but we're not done yet. And before I let you go, we got to do a Sauce segment. So you sent me a track called "Best Rapper Ever" by Tom McDonald. So let's have a listen to that for about 90 seconds, and we could talk a little bit about what went into that. Sound cool?
Sure. That sounds good.
I Hello, Thomas. I see that you're depressed. What's the problem? Is it the skeletons you're hiding deep inside your closet? Have you been reading all the names they call you in the comments? Have you been worried your haters will put you in the coffin? Are you distraught that you promised vodka was not an option? Now you're having thoughts of doing shots? Tom, you're an alcoholic. Is that true? You're upset that you can't have booze? What's the matter, Thomas? Something's got you in a bad mood.
Yeah, it does. I'm anxious. Nothing calms me down like Xanax does, but I can't even relapse because the internet will laugh at us. I just need a beer or two, but it's been like a year or two. I thought you disappeared. I can't believe that I'm still here with you. Shut up! My therapist said me and you can't speak again. I locked the devil out, but it was you who let the demons in.
Tom, you're a comedian. I'm only gonna tell you once. You really need to be my friend.
I'm walking alone in the darkness, sharks in the water, a sky full of vultures.
The doctor been giving you pills because the pressure you're under been giving you ulcers.
Shut up, let me remind you, I'm independent because I'm the guy who does anything that I want and goes viral.
You're independent because no one will sign you. You got a YouTube that no one subscribes to. You got a Spotify nobody vibes to. I'm not another person you can lie to.
I'll be the greatest as long as the sky's blue.
Liar! Come on, Thomas, keep it real.
You're the liar, I'ma tell you exactly how I feel. I'm the best rapper ever, I don't wanna be great. If they're the best, then I'm better, don't you make no mistake. Cause I'm a gold, feel it in my bones until I'm a ghost. I'm the one who pulls the sword out of the stone. Best ever, I'm the best rapper.
Whew, that is a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Tom in a nutshell. Is it's a lot.
Yeah, wow. It's awesome in so many ways. Like I love his like Eminem style aggressive vocals. It's like in certain points and like yeah, low end obviously sounds awesome. It's super in your face and aggressive and funny and it's a lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, great job.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Yeah, so Evan, just tell me a little bit about what went into that.
Yeah. So the reason I picked this one, Tom and I have done probably 8 or almost 10 albums now together where he's brought me on as a mixer. It's, well over 100 songs. So we have I have a really good understanding of what he's trying to do as an artist. And our communication has gotten to the point where that line between, like we were talking about before, mixing and the post-production side is kind of free reign. So this is one song that I was able to contribute to what he was trying to accomplish with the song. The whole thing of the song is he's got these inner demons that are telling him he's not good enough, and all those inner voices that we have all the time, and him trying to overcome them. And what he sent me to mix was 2 vocals, the inner voice and his voice, and then the inner voice was doubled with an octave down kind of demon sounding voice, and that was how you could understand that was distinguish. What I was able to do with the mix was that low octave. I'm not sure how he accomplished it. I think it was probably just negative 12 semitones on a auto tune or something like that, because it was that super deep, no formant shifted vocal. It sounds like a Darth Vader voice or whatever. And it was really inarticulate, and it was really hard to kind of hear the lyrics. And so I was kind of struggling with that in the mix. And so I ended up recreating it, and it allowed me to kind of add to what Tom had done in his production. So I think I ended up using Little Altar Boy to get that octave down. But I was able to play with the formant a bit more to get a little bit more clarity out of it. I ended up adding like a whisper track to that as well, using a synthesized vocoder whisper voice, and all that kind of comes in and out. So if you listen back to that first verse, the demon voice starts with his voice in the low octave, but the low octave kind of is automated up as he starts to get more aggressive, and those whispers come up in the sides, and it starts to sound like more voices. And it, that whole just understanding the intent of what he was trying to accomplish. Like I just, because everyone has those inner voices, and that insidiousness of it, that like, and some of the stuff he talks about in the lyrics are pretty dark. It's kind of like you should just drink yourself to death, and you're only good at writing when you're intoxicated, and like you should kill yourself, you get more attention that way. And just like really terrible, awful things, and having that creepiness and that insidiousness come through in the production of the voice, you know, not just this low octave that's like, oh, it's obviously like a demon voice, you know, but actually kind of try and get those chills when you know, the voice changes and it shifts down a little bit and it gets a little bit more. Yeah. And the other reason I thought this would be a good one
I thought you did a great job with that, by the way. It was done very tastefully and like, I don't know, it just sounded very like, I don't want to say compressed, but like everything had its place and it didn't feel like hokey or annoying. It felt like, whoa. It's just like, it's like the low voice is supporting the high voice, you know?
Yeah. And that it was